Have you ever stopped to think, really think, about family relationships? About whether underneath all the love we assume is just there. Maybe other things are going on, surprising things.
Yeah, like forces quietly shaping things we normally see as purely emotional.
Exactly. And sometimes those forces can feel almost economic, which sounds odd, I know.
It really does.
So today, that's what we're diving into, these really interesting concepts, conditional parenting and something called the value cycle cliff. And our guide for this deep dive is the, well, frankly fascinating work of Devin McClarty. We're looking specifically at his piece, Conditional Parenting, the Value Cycle Cliff.
Right, that's part of the Loop Speak series.
That's the one, from the Financial Engine, which is owned by D Investment Enterprise, LLC. Our job today really is just to unpack what McClarty is saying here, to try and make sense of his framework.
Got it.
And right off the bat, let's be clear. This isn't about blaming anyone, not about judgment. It's more about understanding a system, or at least McClarty's perspective on a system.
A system where, as he puts it,
Where, yeah, he provocatively says, parenting has an economy. And within that, for some people, children can almost become part of an economic portfolio.
which is such a jarring phrase when you first hear it.
It is.
Because we're so conditioned, to think of the parent-child bond as, well, unconditional, purely emotional.
Right.
But McClarty's work, it doesn't necessarily attack that ideal head-on. It sort of forces us, doesn't it, to look at the practical side,
Yeah.
the maybe transactional bits that can creep in, even if we're not aware of them.
Unconscious. Yeah.
Totally unconscious. It's like holding up a mirror, showing how, I don't know, societal structures, government policies, maybe even our own biases can subtly twist these deep emotional connections into something, while something that looks a bit like a balance sheet.
Okay, so if we accept that premise, just for this discussion, that family dynamics can have this economic undercurrent, how does McClarty say this economy of parenting first shows up, like early on?
Well, he points to the very beginning, really.
He makes a pretty bold claim, right? That from birth up until age 17, kids are often linked to a whole bunch of government incentives.
That's his argument, yeah. Things like tax credits.
Those specific ones for having kids, yeah.
Huh.
And maybe certain food programs, housing benefits, even free health care in some situations.
Exactly. Those tangible benefits tied directly to having a dependent child.
It sounds almost cynical, maybe,
Mm.
to suggest those things actually drive how parents behave, even subtly.
Well, that's where it gets tricky and maybe counterintuitive. McClarty isn't saying every parent sits down with a calculator,
Okay.
but he's highlighting how for some, these incentives, they're not insignificant. They can become this sort of unconscious background hum, a real tangible benefit.
So the child becomes, in his terms, part of their economic portfolio.
In that specific framework, yes. And he also mentions the social side, the sort of badge of honor that can come with being a parent in society.
Right.
But the key thing he emphasizes is that the government itself puts a literal dollar value on dependence during this time. And for some individuals, he argues, that can subtly shift the whole dynamic towards something more transactional, even if nobody ever says it out loud.
So that period, birth to 17, sets the stage for what McClarty calls the really critical moment, the 18-year cliff.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, when I first read about McClarty's 18-year cliff, it really gave me pause. What exactly happens at 18, according to him? And why is it such a turning point in this whole value cycle idea?
Right. So at 18, boom, those government benefits we just talked about,
Yeah.
the ones directly tied to having a dependent child, they largely just stop.
Just end abruptly.
Pretty abruptly, yeah. The child-related tax credits are gone. Child support usually ends. The official financial incentives tied to that child expire.
Okay.
And what McClarty forces us to confront is the really tough implication for some parents, the ones operating maybe unconsciously within that economic portfolio mindset.
Right.
The end of the financial benefits can feel like the end of the relationship's value. It's not just a date on a calendar. It's the moment the underlying basis of the connection gets revealed. Like if the foundation wasn't purely emotional.
Then the structure gets shaky when the financial props are removed.
Exactly. Think about it. If your life, or at least a significant part of your financial or even social structure, revolved around those incentives, that 18th birthday isn't just a party. It's a sudden, sharp change in your perceived portfolio.
And that can lead to detachment.
A detachment that can feel incredibly cold, almost businesslike is how he frames it.
And if that bond, as you said, was maybe more transactional than emotional all along,
Yeah.
then McClarty talks about the parents' return on investment, their ROI.
Yeah, that language is deliberate.
What they felt they were getting back from the relationship, suddenly it's perceived as zero, gone.
Right. The perceived benefit vanishes.
And this sudden stop, this cessation of benefits, it triggers a real shift in behavior, potentially.
Potentially, yes. The relationship dynamic can change dramatically. Maybe fewer phone calls, maybe they're shorter. Less warmth, perhaps.
A general kind of emotional pulling back.
The underlying message in the scenarios McClarty describes can feel like, okay, you're 18 now, you're on your own.
Which sounds absolutely devastating for the young adult. Is McClarty saying this is always a conscious decision by the parent, like they deliberately abandon the relationship?
He really emphasizes it's often not conscious. It's more like the system itself creates this outcome rather than deliberate malice.
Okay, so it's an unintended consequence of this value cycle he's describing.
Often, yes. But for the child, the feeling is the same, isn't it? The impact of realizing or suspecting that your perceived value was tied to a payout, that's incredibly damaging.
It feels like a profound abandonment.
Absolutely. And it can lead to this really painful thought process. Wait, was I loved for me? Or was I loved for what I or my status as a dependent brought in?
That's heartbreaking.
And the damage isn't just emotional for that individual. McClarty suggests it becomes generational.
How so?
Because if you experience that kind of conditional parenting and you don't become aware of the pattern, you might unknowingly repeat it.
Right, with your own kids.
Exactly. You perpetuate this dynamic where love, or at least the expression of it, stays tangled up with perceived benefits or value instead of being truly unconditional. The cycle continues.
So McClarty pulls all these pieces together, the incentives, the cliff, the decline, into a larger pattern. How does he lay out this whole conditional parenting value cycle?
He describes it as basically a 4-stage process. You've got stage 1, the initial incentives, that's birth to 17, where the benefits flow.
Okay.
Stage 2 is the crucial 18-year cliff, that sharp cutoff point we talked about.
Right, the benefits stop.
Then comes stage 3, the potential decline in the relationship, as that perceived value drops off for
It's emotional distancing.
And finally, stage 4, the reset. This is where the child, now an adult, might become a parent themselves, and if they haven't broken the pattern, they step right back into the same system. The cycle starts over.
Wow. Initial incentives, 18-year cliff, decline, and reset. That's a powerful and honestly a bit of a bleak cycle he's outlining.
It is sobering to consider.
So the keys then, according to McClarty, the way to break out of this is to somehow decouple value from benefit, to separate how much you value someone from what you might get from them.
That seems to be the core suggestion, yes. It's about making an active, conscious choice.
A choice to build relationships on.
Yeah.
Genuine connection.
Exactly. On genuine emotional bonds, regardless of any perceived gain or loss. McClarty talks about consciously deciding not to let love become like a budget line item.
Or accounting, as he puts it.
Precisely. It's about seeing those implicit values society or systems might place on relationships and actively choosing something different, prioritizing unconditional connection over any kind of transaction.
So, just to reiterate, that core distinction McClarty makes, parenting is about the unconditional connection. And what he calls accounting is about the perceived benefit. That's a really, really stark way to frame it, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And if you zoom out, connect this to the bigger picture, it really does shine a light on how these large-scale things, societal norms, government structures, economic systems, can unintentionally ripple down and shape our most intimate relationships.
Even without us realizing it.
Right. And understanding these forces, as McClarty suggests, that's the vital first step. It gives you the chance to make a conscious choice. It touches on those bigger sociological questions about how we, as a society, assign value and how economic thinking can subtly permeate even areas we think are immune to it. And again, it's crucial to remember this whole discussion, McClarty's framework, it's not really an attack on parents. It's about recognizing the systems we're all in.
And how they influence us.
Exactly. And hopefully giving us tools to navigate them with more awareness, more conscious choice.
This deep dive, it definitely makes you pause and think about love, connection, value, all of it in a pretty profound way. McClarty leaves us with that incredibly clear, almost uncomfortably resonant thought. I'm going to quote him directly here. Because if you only love when there's a payout, That's not parenting. That's accounting.
Powerful.
It really is. And maybe that's the thought to leave you, our listener, with. Reflect on that distinction. Parenting versus accounting. How might that apply not just in families, but in other relationships too?
It's a broad lens you could apply.
Yeah. It builds on that whole idea of detaching value from benefits, of choosing, as McClarty puts it so powerfully near the end, not to let a government chart decide when someone stops being valuable to you.
Choosing connection over calculation.
Exactly. Something to definitely mull over.